Well, Doug, I just wonder whether one of the things you have to do is fight a perception that might be widely held among companies that you're an advertising company rather than an IT company as you try to sort of build an IT business.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and we are an advertising company, but more than anything, we're an information company. And the first area where we got traction as a business was taking the world's information, making it universally accessible and useful, and applying that to the advertising world, which was a great business model when we got out of the gates. But as Google has evolved, we've moved into a whole bunch of other different areas that have complemented that. So whether you're thinking about YouTube or Android or the enterprise business, which is what I look after, people want to talk to Google about innovation. They want to talk to us about how to drive their businesses and how to apply technology to big issues and give people a great user experience around it.
Well, tell us the key services that you offer in Google Enterprise.
So Google Enterprise is interesting. We've followed the continuum of consumerization of IT. Almost, we're probably the poster child. Companies, for example, you can go out and find cricket or rugby scores from 1955, but you can't find a document that you would have put on your internet last week. And so many companies came to us and said, look, I'm at home having this great search experience, but yet I go to my office and I can't find something I put up yesterday. So we created what we call a pizza box, a little yellow box with Google algorithms that people plugged into their businesses. And that they were able to put connectors to their systems like SAP or Oracle or SharePoint and really get a very robust search experience in the business world. So that was the first step that we took. The next step was around our geospatial products. So millions of people use Google Earth, billions of people use Google Earth and Google Maps. And they have this amazing experience to go get turn-by-turn navigation to the Hoyt's Theater, but they can't track down their ATMs or their trucks or their shops or their salespeople. So businesses asked us, they said, well, can we actually use your application programming interfaces, your APIs, and use Google Maps and overlay it onto our application? So companies like Real Estate Australia is a great example of a heavily used website that uses Google Maps and a lot of our infrastructure. And then Google Apps is probably the third leg in the stool. Nearly 400 million Gmail users in the world. Many of them started off as consumer Gmail users. And when that product was released, people didn't believe the fact that you could get 25 gigs of space and you can have this amazing search capability across your email. And actually, people thought it was a joke because it was released on April 1st, 2005. And the reality is that the traction caught on, and then we actually started using it internally as a business. And then businesses came to us and said, how do we use this great technology, and how can I take this great Gmail experience I have in my consumer life and apply it to my business and put some administrative controls and some service level agreements around it. And so that has burgeoned to over 5 million companies a day getting onto Google Apps, to the point where most startups, in fact 97% of startups in Silicon Valley, get online initially using Google Apps. It doesn't make any sense for them to go off and buy an enterprise agreement of software and buy servers and the rest when cash is relatively tight and they're pretty small, and they also are really comfortable in the cloud.
But does Google charge them for that?
Yeah. So it's effectively a cup of coffee a month for a Google Apps license. So 50 US per year.
Is Google making most of its money in the enterprise, in Google Enterprise?
The revenue is split across the three businesses relatively evenly. So the search boxes that we sell to large businesses, to banks, to telcos, to governments, that's a healthy chunk. The second piece is Maps and Earth, our geospatial solutions, and then the Google Apps piece as well. But we also have some really exciting things on our product roadmap around cloud services. So people recognize Google as having an amazing infrastructure. We are the second or third largest IP network in the world. We're the third largest server manufacturer in the world, but we don't sell any. We use them for our infrastructure, our data centers. And many, many businesses ask us, well, actually, I don't really want to own a data center. I don't want to have all these servers under my roof. Can we not use your expertise and your infrastructure to house our data? And so that's becoming a burgeoning business for us as well.
Well, in that you're competing with Amazon and Microsoft, among others, I guess.
Yeah, but it's a really exciting market and it's growing incredibly fast. So there's plenty of room for lots of players there. So we're excited.
Is there any kind of overarching ambition as to what proportion of Google's revenue will come from enterprise?
We don't break out the revenue from our businesses, but we have executive endorsement from the highest levels. So Larry Page recently in a earnings call came out and said enterprise is a huge strategic area for Google. Eric Schmidt, if you know Eric very well, he comes from an enterprise heritage from Sun and Novell. He's been a huge supporter and gets involved quite regularly. Nikesh Arora, who looks after our global sales organization, is also a big proponent and supporter as well. So at the highest reaches, there's a broad recognition that this is a key area for Google to leverage to expand and diversify our revenue portfolio.
But one of the things Larry Page also said was that the strategy, the overarching strategy, was to have more wood behind fewer arrows. I mean, how does that apply to your business? Because it seems a bit scattergun. Are you going to narrow down to a small number of revenue items?
I still think our arrow's in the quiver. I mean, I think Larry's been involved in lots of our customers. Some of the other arrows that you might have heard about, whether it was Google Health or other things that we took a look at and decided we probably wasn't a core competency. But as we get more focus, enterprise is becoming more and more prominent. So we continue to invest very aggressively in engineering talent. There's lots of it here in Sydney and across Australia, across Asia Pacific. It's a big proportion of the revenue in the business. My team has grown 10x since I started about 3 years ago here in Asia Pacific. And we just have a huge amount of momentum internally and externally in the market. So I think we go to market a lot differently than your conventional IT companies. We tend to be a little bit more thin. We try to leverage technology and the cloud a bit more. So you probably don't see as many of us as you would the other guys, but that's almost deliberate because what people don't understand is when you deal with the other IT vendors, you're actually paying for that really heavy presence and all the infrastructure and the maintenance and all the extra costs. And with Google, we're trying to promote some of our core principles and core opportunity areas. Whether it's cloud or social or mobile, all that stuff and all that magic that's happening in the consumer world, we want to push that and have people work the way that they live. You're at home, you have this great experience in a social network, whether it's ours or Facebook, and you're buying books on Amazon or you're doing auctions, and then you go to work and you're saddled with this sort of antiquated technology and tethered to a device and you're punching a clock. We think that world is changing, and it's changing very radically here in Australia, and Google Enterprise is a big part of transforming that.
Australia recently had, the Australian government recently put out a paper called Australia in the Asian Century. Obviously you have responsibility for all of Asia, including Australia. What's your perspective on that paper? How do you think it's positioned, and how successful do you think it'll be?
Yeah, it's like any working document. It was a fantastic effort to be able to put a wrapper around an issue in a really exciting area. The proof's in the pudding when the rubber hits the road, but the reality is that there's this massive opportunity, and I just happened to flick through the report myself briefly, and just the numbers are staggering in terms of number of users, the sizes of the markets, and how quickly they're growing in Asia, the adoption across mobile, social, and cloud technologies. You can't ignore it, and the fact that Australia enjoys all these advantages of proximity and cultural affinity and time zone, all the rest of it. It's an amazing opportunity that is it's just pretty obvious. And the fact that the government had the foresight to go off and look into this issue at a high level, and they outlined the issues and outlined the 25 points to focus on. I guess the onus is then on not just the government but on industry and the other constituencies to put some wood behind those arrows, if you like. And which ones do they really want to back? And I think they struck the right chords around building infrastructure, using the cloud, investing in training and education, and lots of other really great ideas that are fundamental, but also need to get a lot more granularity around them to be successful. But again, I was just one of the stats that I was reading is I think the Asia Pacific consumer population is going to quadruple or something in the next 20 years or whatever it is. I might be misquoting the numbers, but that represents an outrageous opportunity for Australia to be able to leverage that and to integrate more closely into that economy. And that's it does show some insight to be able to identify that and to go after it. So we wholeheartedly endorse the effort and the report. It's a great read, and we're looking forward to working on the next phase, which is actually making it happen.
That's great. We'll have to leave it there. Thanks very much for joining Business Spectator, Doug.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.